Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I have interviewed hundreds upon hundreds of songwriters about the writing process. I have a PhD in English language and literature, and I'm a writer myself. So I've always been interested in treating songwriters the same way that we treat poets and traditional prose writers, as writers, plain and simple. There is no talk of how bands get their name, favorite tour stories, favorite foods, band drama, or anything else. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers as we go deep, deep, deep into the writing process. That's it, nothing else. And with that, let's get into today's episode. And today on the podcast, it is Mary Chapin Carpenter. When a 5-time Grammy winner talks about songwriting or writing, you listen. And that's what I did. In fact, you know, an artist is big and has won a lot of awards if their Wikipedia page, they have their Wikipedia page about their bio, and then they have their own Wikipedia page just for the awards and nominations. So look at that list. It's on Wikipedia. She was last nominated, I believe, in 2022 for a Grammy, but she's won 5 Grammys. Her 17th album, Mary Chapin Carpenter's 17th album, is out now. It is called Personal History. It was produced by Josh Kaufman of Bonnie Light Horseman. I've had all 3 of them on the pod as well. There's a lot of connections here. I have a quote I wrote down that she said, and I absolutely adored this conversation. It was fun. We laughed a lot. It was just a very good time. But I wrote this down because it was so profound, and I think it's I'm just going to read it to you, and then I'll tell you what I think about it. But she said, songwriting is about being awake to something you've never thought of before, or it's a way of thinking about something you've never experienced before. And that's really what good writers do. That's what poets do. Good poets, show you something in a light you've never seen before. They take an ordinary object and make it extraordinary. And when she said that, that's what a lot of what I thought about. And that's really why her lyrics are so good, because I think she's a songwriter with a poet's voice. We did get into the specifics of the ritual as well. She has to write with a pencil and a yellow legal pad. I love that. And I also love what she said she used to do. And that is back in the day when before phones, and when she would think of lyrics before we had phones to carry around with us and record things, she would just call her voicemail over and over again on her phone, on her answering machine, and recite lyrics into it when she was on tour. And then when she would come home, she would listen to it. If you're of an age, you know what I mean. You may have done that. And then we talked song walking, and she has a term for it, song walking. When she finds she's in a rut, she grabs the dogs and goes for a walk. And of course, we talked about movement. I loved this interview. And we talked about authors at the end. You can tell I have so much to talk about. She finally mentioned David Grann, one of my favorite authors, and also S.A. Cosby, another one of my favorites. Again, the album is called Personal History. It is her 17th album. Here is my interview with Mary Chapin Carpenter. Are you an everyday type of writer or just when the mood strikes?
I think I'm somewhere in the middle, in the sense that a long time ago when I started spending a lot of time on the road, I really beat myself up for not, writing, finding time to write while I was on the road. And then finally I just realized it just wasn't something that worked for me. So I made peace with the idea that I would just work on songs when I was home. And take that kind of, let myself off that particular hook. So that's partly why I say I'm somewhere in the middle, because I spend a lot of time traveling as well. But when I am home and I have a project, yes, I'd say that I sit down for a certain amount of time every day to work on something.
So when you said you spent a lot of time beating yourself up, was it that you were writing, but the stuff that you were writing wasn't good, or you just felt like you were blocked?
I don't think I felt blocked so much as it felt exhausting. I don't know if you've ever spent any time on the road the way musicians do. Not that that's your fault, but it's daunting to find not only the energy and the stamina, but also a private space, a quiet space. Um, all of those things for me go into um, you know being at you know my best, if you will, in terms of sitting down and writing. So when those things are hard to find, any one of them or all of them, it's daunting.
I do have a job actually that puts me on the road over 100 nights a year. So,
Okay, so
um,
but you're not riding a tour bus, I take it.
no, I'm not riding a tour bus. But and again, it's different. What I do is I'm not writing songs and I'm traveling, but I think as a writer, someone who does writing on the side, um, and is published, I think for me at least, the challenge is: do I use that time? Do I use the downtime to recharge so that I'm fresh creatively later on, or it's okay, I have an hour of solitude, I've got to be writing immediately. So I can see that, could identify with that kind of anxiety of, do I take that time to just recharge and do nothing, literally nothing, or like I said, I've got an hour, I better write.
Well, I imagine you would agree that every individual has different ways of filling their tank back up. And for some, it may be just, frenetic activity, whatever that is. And for others, it may really require just timing out and being away and apart from people. So I think there's no formula, obviously. It depends on who you are and how you are.
How disciplined are you when it comes to that process? Are you someone who can sit down, like, I need frequent breaks? Practically, can you write for extended periods of time? How disciplined are you as when it comes to the actual sitting down and writing?
I think it just depends on how you're feeling that day. There's no again, I when I saw the topic of our Zoom, I was a little like, "Oh, no," because I've never had a a tidy way of explaining or assessing what it is, how I write songs. I've never, whenever I've been invited to workshops or things like that, I always have shied away because I don't really know if I have advice to give or I can speak to how and what I do, but I it's not it's not necessarily consistent, and it's not necessarily something I can I think there's a certain amount of, you know, alchemy and mystery to it, quite honestly. It's just like sometimes you get an idea and it's like how in the and if it becomes something and you think back on it afterwards and you go, how in the world did I come up with that idea? And I don't even know. But sometimes, I remember reading an obituary actually of Bill Monroe. And, you know, it said something, when they were talking about how Mr. Monroe, how did you're so prolific. How'd you write so many songs? And he sort of, you know, I remember, I just remember this. The way he responded was almost like he was like, sounded like his mandolin. Doo-doo-doo. He'd sort of like respond just like this. And he'd say, I don't know. They just come out of the air, and that was how he thought of it. And I thought that was particularly charming and also really magical too.
Yeah, I think I always try to think about the place putting me in the best. I agree with you 100%. But I think a lot about what can I do to put myself in the position to receive those ideas? Like, are there things I can do that will increase the chances?
I think quite often it's not so much how you're doing when you're sitting down. For me, it's sitting at my kitchen table. But I think it's in the, quotidian moments of your day and driving to the market or doing errands or taking a walk or whatever it is. It's just being open. It's being open And when you're reading a book, being open to phrases, being open, it's just, you know, I think it's just being awake to things. And so often it's a phrase or a word that kicks something off, as well as sometimes it's just a musical phrase as well. And that's a huge part of it, obviously, that you may not necessarily be writing music, but um, I think what often, songwriting is about is sort of just being awake to something you just hadn't thought of before, or a certain way of thinking about something that you hadn't quite experienced before. I know that's very vague, but I think this whole subject is somewhat vague
Yeah,
in a positive way.
yeah, no, I agree, and, you said that the kitchen table. I had John Darnielle on a couple of years ago, and he said he wrote an entire album at the dining room table, and I'll never forget it because his quote was, "That's where the mojo was."
That's
A
so John. That's so
y
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the essence of the table, it
Right.
was, "I feel good here, who cares why?" Um, so for me, one of the things I do, like if I'm writing in this, I never write and revise in the same place. I've got to have a difference. So
Okay.
yeah, quite literally, if I'm writing in this seat, I'll revise in that chair behind me. It doesn't have to be this, it can be the same room, just a different space.
Mm.
Um,
Why do you think
so
that is?
So, as someone who taught writing, I would always tell my students the best when it comes to prose, the best revision process involves getting as far away from the writing process as you can,
Mm.
because you've got to look at it differently. So that's why temporal distance. Here's what I've learned about myself. If um, and I published a book last year that's actually a rock memoir. A good friend of mine is a guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God, and we collaborated on his memoir. That came out last year. So I went through all this. And um, so here's what I learned about myself. If I finish something in the morning and I look at it later that same day, uh, I'm still too close to it. I feel like, well, hell, I wrote it. I'm not getting rid of anything. But it's amazing if I finish something at night and wake up the next morning, it's like a reset. So finish something in the morning, later that same day, still too close to it. But finish something at night, wake up the next morning, there's something about sleep. I can get up and revise and edit like it's nobody's business.
Mhm.
I
No,
don't.
I think I relate to that. I feel like I have the overnight test. That's what I call it. When you finish something uh, and then you just leave it. You walk away and you just get gone, as it were. And then hopefully the next day you come back to it with fresh ears, fresh eyes, fresh spirit, and it can show you what you want to fix, and it can certainly show you what you want to throw out. And I mean, at that point, you're ready to edit, or continue if you haven't finished it yet. But anyway, the point is that the overnight test, whatever you want to call it, I think is a helpful thing.
But it's funny because I had Mary Timony on a couple of years ago, and she said the opposite. She said that, and I love this. I'd never forgotten this. She said that if she finishes something in the morning, she will look at it at night because she is a different person at night. She's had experiences during that day, whether it's going to the store, that's all it is. But
Mm.
but it so she sees herself as a different human being later that day. And so
Mm.
she approaches it from in a different perspective. I could never do that, but I never forgotten that, what she told me. Um,
I think for myself, my brain is kind of tired at night, and it's not a coincidence to me that at a certain point when I'm sort of keeping, you know, office hours, um, it's not a coincidence that after I'm sort of done for the day, that I'm just kind of unspooling and I'm in relaxation or, you know, bad TV mode or, just things to just let it let go in a way. So I don't know. I think there's something to that.
but see, again, I love exploring this because I don't know the answers, but I'm fascinated by why this works. Um, I find sometimes that if I edit when I'm fatigued, I'm in a good way, I'm less critical. It's almost, you're when I'm fatigued, I find that when I'm too awake and too alert, sometimes I get in my own way and right?
Well, I was just thinking when you said that, for me, the editing process doesn't necessarily stop at the kitchen table when I think I've finished something, because then I'm going into the studio, say, and I'll be fixing a word here or there in that during that process as well, and that's an entirely different kind of creative process. So, um, there's many junctures at which you can sort of massage it, you know? So again, it just depends on what kind of writing you may be doing, obviously.
Are you less likely for those lightning in the bottle moments that where songs just pour out all at once? Are you less likely to leave those because you think there's a reason why it happened? Or I've had some people tell me they're distrustful of ideas that come too quickly. This is by H.L. Mencken. He said the value of writing seems to be in inverse proportion to the ease of writing. Whatever flows freely and bubblingly turns out to be sorry stuff a week later.
Well, I don't, you know, again, it's not for me to tell H.L. Mencken, you know, how to do what he does or did. But, I've never done this, but obviously I've heard of people who do morning pages, you know, that sort of thing. And again, I mean, obviously the caveat to this podcast and all that we're speaking of is that it's different for each person. So what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the other. It is interesting to explore all of those situations, though. And as far as when I think of the songs of mine that I would say fall into that category of lightning in a bottle, or you know, just they appeared and all of that. First off, it's once you pick yourself up off the floor from having had that experience, like, "Oh my god, this is fucking great." You know? Once you pick yourself up off the floor, I think you can just be very sober about whether it's something that works or doesn't. And I welcome it in all forms, whether it's out of the blue or something that I've truly labored over.
But as a songwriter, do you have trouble sometimes getting out of your own way in those initial stages and wondering whether something should go down there, or do you just kind of let it all out at first, then go back and look at these things?
Um, I what I'm thinking about as you ask that is that what my experience seems to have been pretty consistently is that for example, if I've been to on the road for a long time, and if it's been and I haven't been writing, and it's time to get back to it, right? And oh my god, it's like the first 100 attempts to sit down and kind of find the way in. It's just misery. It's just misery, 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 and it's the worst crap I've ever come up with. And what was I thinking, that I could do this? Who am I to even say that I consider myself a songwriter? I mean, if there's a way to beat myself up, I will find it. You know, I will trash talk myself from here to China. And that's just been my experience. It's like the muscle is not working. The brain has not clicked in, whatever it is. And yet, my experience has also been, if I just keep at it one day, one day, something will show up on the page that isn't dreadful and horrible, and it leads to the next right thing. So I guess the short answer is perseverance, right? And tenacity um, and and belief in yourself, and remembering that you've been here before. Um, but at the same time, I would also argue that there's probably a lot to be said for, like, some people say, I need to take myself away, go to a cabin and be apart from the world. Or, I mean, that's why they have writers retreats and Yado and all those places. There's, there's something s- so constructive for some people to, just be allowed to be in a different environment, or, just change it up somehow. Um, so all of that, yes.
Well, it's a great segue into a quote that I was going to ask you about. I interviewed the writer Anthony Doerr a few years ago, and he wrote All the Light We Cannot See and other books. And I said, "What do you think about writer's block?" And he said, "I don't believe in writer's block." He said, "Writer's block is a failure of courage."
Oh, boy, that puts us in our place, doesn't it?
But that's exactly what you're saying, though, is you can't be afraid. You just got to write, even if it's dreadful. His
Well,
whole thing is,
I think, yes, exactly. But I think I mean, and again, you just look, but it's like you have to go. It's like friends of mine who do the same thing. It's like, oh my God, you have to write so much shit. It's just terrible. It's the worst. And writing all that terrible stuff does do a number, I think, from time to time on your sense of self and your the tools that you bring to this. You feel like you don't have any tools, because if you did, why are you coming up with such bleak, awful stuff? But eventually, again, you something clicks, or some sort of, the day is different. I don't know what it is. Something just manages to break through, and then you're on your way. And I would say that it's like that's what it's felt like with every album that I've done. And I've done, oh my God, I think 17 or something, where you write and you write and you write and you write. And then, and nothing's, it's just nothing feels true to you. And then when something does click and you do feel it, and you say to yourself, there's this euphoria in a way where it makes me feel like, ah, I'm on my way. I know where I'm going now. I'm on my way. And that's a feeling like nothing else. It's magical.
so what was there a song on the album? I have old stuff that I've discarded that I'd like to go back to. Is there a song on the album that you felt like giving up on, but you pushed through?
For sure. There's a song called The Night We Never Met that I must have, it came up. I started working on that song years ago. And I have a number of examples of songs on other records that also had just inexplicable journeys of time and change and iteration. Um, and that somehow they just somehow I didn't let them go, or they didn't let me go, whatever it would have been. And they ended up being finished. And I so deeply love them. And it's always like a reminder, or a real sort of almost a soul reminder, if I can put it like that, that there's a lot of merit in keeping things around. And when you have just sort of a gut feeling about something, it may be 1% of a gut feeling, but it's worth listening to hold on to something that you might want to come back to. And so on the new record, The Night We Never Met is one of those songs that it had been hovering for a very, very long time, and had taken many different forms. And it was actually one of the last songs that I sort of put under my arm to take to England to record, because I always take more than I need, but because you never know what might fall out or not work. Um, but I put that in the folder, as it were, and, you know, with the brilliance of Josh Kaufman and all the beautiful musicians that were there, we recorded it, and I love it so much. And I'm so glad that I didn't give up on it. So
So was this a song that you'd been returning to almost out of frustration, like it's gonna solve, or is one that had always been kind of in the back of your mind in the back there over a period of time?
Kind of both, if that's possible. Like, I just felt like there was something in it that wasn't that that I didn't wanna give up on, you know? I don't know. And I don't know also if it's because the music part of it, like I think that was really the key in the way that when I ended up sort of changing the music and the cadence and the scheme of things, it's like it all sort of fell into place. And before that, I'd been it had been sort of attached to a different kind of music and tempo and stuff, and it just, the lyrics were sort of felt true, but the music wasn't working. So, it's a combination of things in this case.
All right, so the flip side, is there a song on the album that stood out as being one that just one of those the fastest song where you said, "One take, this is good. I'm not gonna touch this."
In the writing process, you mean, not in the
Yeah.
studio?
No, in
Uh,
the writing process.
yeah, no. Short answer, no. Um, and that, I it took me about 4 years to write this record, from the time I first started it, and that's pretty average for me. It's always been about 4 years, and I just, I the thing I love about doing this songwriting is the time that I can take with it. That that if there's a deadline, it's something that I've imposed on myself. And why wouldn't you want to give yourself as much time as you need? And that said, I remember years and years and years ago having a phone conversation with my friend Lucinda Williams, who was telling me, I don't think I'm breaking a confidence by sharing this with you, but she was in the midst of finishing up an album in the studio, and she was saying how much she wished she had more time because she wasn't sure if the songs were all finished, and she felt it there was a deadline and the clock was running and the cash register was running and the record label was pushing and all of those pressures that are there. And she was just feeling really, squeezed by it. And I understood how she felt. It's like once you've kind of put it out there, there's nothing you can't change it after that. It's done, right? And so I've always, in my own situation, I've just always been very thankful for the time and that I've had. And in the case of this most recent record, in case of personal history, I really think that I made the record of my dreams because I had that time. And when I was ready to go into the studio, I knew I was ready. And that sense of certainty is like fuel, it really is like fuel. And there's, just because you're ready doesn't mean you're not going to walk into the studio and still struggle with things. But having that sort of tank full of fuel, I think makes you somewhat better equipped to deal with the challenges in the studio too.
I'm gonna ask you a very specific question about the writing process now. Are you, when it comes to lyrics, are you a pen and paper person or a computer typewriter type of person?
I am a pencil, yellow legal pad with an eraser, and oh my god. So all of those things, and but I want to tell you two stories before I forget. One being, um, years ago, I was talking to this wonderful writer, Danny. Oh gosh, I'm going to make myself so angry that it doesn't matter, but she was a wonderful writer, and she asked me about rituals and ritual of songwriting, that sort of thing. And I said, no, I don't think so. And she said, oh, okay, well, then tell me, you know, give me an idea of how you know, what a day looks like, whatever, in songwriting. And so I said, well, I get my yellow legal pad out and my pencil and my ritual. She goes, that's a ritual. And I was like, oh, you're right. So I didn't realize that until she pointed that out to me. So, and that, the yellow legal pad and the pencil and the eraser, it's always been like that since the since the Stone Age for me. I mean, it's just always been like that. The only thing that's different is that the device that I use to record my ideas on just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And so it's all stayed the same except for the recording device. I will say also that I used to do this back in the Stone Age. Um, I'd be on the road, and this was before I decided that I wasn't going to, beat myself up about not riding on the road. But I'd still have ideas, just wasn't going to sit down and try to make them happen. And what I would do, because I didn't have, a recording device or whatever, I would call, I would call my home phone and leave a message and sing into the phone my idea, whatever it was, and then hit save, 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 save. And then when I got home, I could retrieve all of those voice messages on my answering machine and write down my ideas, and I wouldn't forget them. Needs must.
Some Another songwriter, I forgot who it was, but I have heard that story before. So the equivalent to that, which is hilarious, is I interviewed like a 20-something songwriter who what they'll do is they'll keep on emailing themselves lyrics.
Right.
Okay, so they have an email to themselves that's 1,000 messages long that they just keep on emailing themselves rather than just like erasing or but I thought that was hilarious that they just keep that long chain.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
if it's any consolation, songwriters are unbelievably specific about brand of pen, if they are using a pen, color of ink. It's got to be a certain color,
I've never
certain it.
heard that. I've never
Oh,
heard. Well, I mean, you've
oh,
been talking to a lot of people, so you obviously have heard it, but
it is the specificity is stunning. A certain type of pen, brand name, color of ink, the width of
but do
the
you think
ball.
that's like Lucky Charms or something like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, we do get occasionally into the deep psychological reasons why colors of ink are better than others. There's childhood issues there too.
Yeah.
But it has to do with like, again, I'll reference Jerry Harrison said it had to be a felt tip pen because he loved the sensation of the scraping.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, it is a tactile thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I
he
get
was a
that.
visual artist also.
But
So
also, it's like I have particular hatred for my friends who are so good at crossword puzzles and they do them in ink. Like, mofo, hello, you know, but
that's wrong.
it is so wrong. But they're
So do you
good
work?
at it. They're so good at it anyway.
I'm sure. So do you worry then my fear with erasing is that I'll erase something that I may wish I'd kept later on, but it's gone forever. But that doesn't bother you. I'm assuming you erase, right?
Well, I do erase here and there, but I'm constantly, it's like draft after draft after draft. It's like a lot of the time I don't want to spend time I mean, that eraser is there to be sure, but it's more out of a strange desire to be neat and tidy on the page as opposed to get rid of this entire paragraph or something like that, a verse or chorus. So it's like I write something and then I tear that page off and then I write the next draft and then I tear that page off and I write the next draft. So it's kind of like that.
And you mentioned kitchen table. So it sounds like that's the place where you're doing most of your writing.
Right back
There you
there.
go.
Yep.
So have you ever thought about why, like, how did you discover that? Was it just you've got that wonderful natural light? Maybe that's it. Is it? I mean, again, I'm the same place. I'm the same way too.
I That's a really good question. I think it's a combination of not just the kitchen table, which is just a very warm and nurturing space to be, but it's also where I happen to live. I live, as we chatted earlier, I live in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, and it's a very rural area where I live, and it's beautiful and serene and peaceful, and it reminds me, I love the quotes that you've been sharing, and it reminds me of a quote from Carl Sandburg when he and his wife, they retired to this beautiful farm in North Carolina, outside of Flat Rock, North Carolina, and he talked about what he called the creative hush of his environment, his landscape. I've never forgotten that because that's what I feel I have here too. And it's the whole place. It's not just my kitchen table, but it's the beauty of the natural world outside of here, outside of this house as well. It all sort of adds up for me as a place where I'm just innately comfortable and at, you know, for the most part at peace, depending on what's going on in the world. So,
All right, here's a great quote for you from Agatha Christie. She said, "The best time to write a book is when you're doing the dishes." So,
oh, I
and
love
I
that.
all this is my one standard quote with songwriters because those eureka moments happen when our brains are engaged in unconscious activities that require no conscious thought,
Oh,
which is why
absolutely.
we get our best ideas in the shower. But here's what I've heard from songwriters. Okay. Folding laundry, gardening, doing the dishes, vacuuming, cleaning, anything that requires no conscious thought. So
Although,
yeah, go ahead.
although, again, all the tasks that you've just mentioned, those to me are like when I get home off the road, I want those tasks so much because it's like creating order out of chaos, whether it's laundry, vacuuming, cleaning the house, whatever. It's like all of a sudden I have, after so long of being at the mercy of an airport or a tour bus or a grimy backstage or whatever it is, I finally am back in an environment that I can control. And so I find all of those tasks to be very nurturing and I love them. I love them. So it's I but I understand and accept what you've said about them being unconscious m- things to do, and your brain can just kind of go a lot of different places. The other thing I was going to say is, and I've talked about this a lot, and it's not original to me in any way, shape, or form. And there's so many articles about it, obviously, but I do what I call it song walking. Um, and what it is for me is uh, when I'm at that kitchen table and it's not feeling blocked per se, but just maybe just my brain's tired or maybe I am just not sure where to go with the next thing and it's not, you know, I'm just kind of like, so I will, push back and call the dog and we go walking in these beautiful areas where I live and I riff out loud what I'm working on, you know. And I've found that, again, it's just a freeing up of somehow. And you just, like you say, you get out of your own way and you just riff and you just riff and you riff. And more often than not, by the time I return back to the house, I've I've found a solution or the next line or whatever it is, and I'm ready to go again. So I just think there's a lot of value in taking breaks that way, whatever it is, whether it's walking or folding the laundry or whatever it is, where you can just, you know, loosen up.
So I have good news for you. There's a reason behind that. So I wrote an article. I'm a big runner, and I actually wrote an article in the Washington Post about this very topic.
I
So
probably read it too, and I
you
probably sent it to friends of mine saying, see, there's something to this.
Okay, so here's the deal.
Yeah.
So there's a chemical, and this is not snake oil science. It's all
Oh, no,
evidence-based from the lab. Yeah.
I believe you.
So there's a chemical in the brain called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, that gets secreted through increased blood flow, which is exercise. So what they did, they put people on a treadmill for 20 minutes at 60% max heart rate. And they did three populations: that treadmill group, the group that did weight training, and the group that did nothing. After 20 minutes at 60% max heart rate, which is not much more than a moderate walk. And after that 20 minutes, gave those people a battery of tests that measured executive function, higher order thinking. Those people always scored higher than people who weren't exercising at all, or the weightlifting people, because it was all about the heart rate, because it needs to be secreted. So here are the parameters: 30 minutes at 60% is all you need. And it's not dose responsive. So 60 minutes isn't twice as good as 30, and
Right.
90% isn't better than 60%.
Got it.
The only caveat, and now anything is better than nothing, is that
Right.
ideally it's going to be an exercise that requires no executive function. So when they've had people walk in nature, those people score higher than people that were walking in New York City because they're trying not to be hit by a bus. Um,
Right.
it's
Yes,
fascinating stuff.
it is.
So when they further did it and they compare people on treadmills versus people on stationary bikes, the
Mhm.
people on the bikes scored higher, because on a treadmill you are thinking about balance. So
Right.
even that, so
Right.
any activity, so if you're going to watch TV, it should be a show involving bachelors and bachelorettes, not CNN. I mean, the research behind this, so I wrote about this for two populations, adults and also kids with ADHD during COVID, who were spending time in the house and not leaving.
Mhm.
Um, and so now there are some school systems. I interviewed a couple of superintendents. It was fascinating stuff. Some school systems, the kids that are on block schedules in elementary schools, they're dropping the kids off a half mile from school, and the kids have to walk the rest of the way in the
Mm.
morning to
Mhm.
school. But those first period teachers saw noticeable gains in performance from those kids. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
my long way of saying that there's a reason why this is happening, why you go out for that walk, and it's
Right.
amazing creatively.
Right. It absolutely is, and it's just part of the process. Yep.
There's a great book called The Friendship by Adam Sisman about the friendship between Wordsworth and Coleridge. And they estimate Wordsworth walked 100,000 miles in his life, which comes out to some absurd amount, but there's nothing else to do back then except walk around. And they
And
said
write
that
poetry.
you're right. Well,
Yeah.
here's the deal. Wordsworth needed natural terrain. Coleridge needed rocky terrain, but Wordsworth composed all of his poems on walks and would revise them and wouldn't come back inside until they were fully formed.
Well, okay, that's pretty bonkers, you
That
know?
is, yeah.
Again, whatever as it's up to each person, right?
And this has such implications for the workplace, like telling people they should be sitting for 8 hours and think they're going to be creative. I think we're realizing that, but yeah, I mean, so there is like I use that as a part of my routine without fail every day. Like I've got to go out I work out in the morning, and I'll take a walk in the afternoon. And it's amazing what it does. Let's talk authors. I'll give you my reading habits. I'd love to know what your habits are. So I am not a genre person. My first thought when I read a book is, what else can I read by someone else? So, because I don't want to get other voices in my head. I'm never
You
the
are
kind of,
very strict with yourself. Good lord.
no, no, no.
But
Uh,
why not? But wouldn't it be fun if you loved a book? Why wouldn't you allow yourself the pleasure of going far deeper into that author's library as opposed to, I mean, life is short. Just enjoy yourself. Reading should be fun, right?
but I think you prove my point is I want to get as many voices in my head.
But
See?
you still can though. Just it's like saying, I'm going to Dairy Queen and I'm gonna have a butterscotch sundae, but I'm not going to allow myself any other treats at Dairy Queen because I need to, oh, I don't know, check out this. This is the worst analogy. I should just shut up right now. But yeah, I should go get a milkshake at Wendy's or something. I just think there's nothing more thrilling than discovering an author loving their work, and then saying, oh, they've got 10 other books that I can read, and I'm going to go find them. It's like gold. It's like discovering treasure. That's how
So
it
let
feels.
me clarify. Yeah, let me clarify slightly. I'll go back to that person later. I just won't do it immediately afterwards. Um,
It's I got
I read two books at a time. Uh,
Jesus, God, dude, you are so
no, no. But let me give you my here's why. It's got to be I usually read like fiction and nonfiction. Um, and what I like about that is that as I'm reading one book, I feel like the other one is working its way in my head somewhere. Like I feel like I'm still there are things in my brain where it's processing. So, um, yeah. So I know you're making me totally self conscious. I feel like I'm.
it's not my intention to make you self-conscious, but I just think there's something to be said for not having rules. Just around, certainly around the pleasure of reading. It's like it's hard enough to carve out the time. So just enjoy it whatever you can. For whatever reason you need the rules that you have, I respect them, I appreciate them, and I will think about them, but I do not necessarily share them.
Okay, the so who do you have a favorite genre? Like who do you tend to turn to? What kind of writing?
I don't have a favorite genre, but I I certainly have authors that I love. Um, and of course, I didn't know you were going to ask this question, so I don't. I'm not prepared with like a really good list that would also allow me to feel like kind of chuffed or something. Um, God, ugh. Well, like right off the bat, I'd say Elizabeth Strout. Olive Kitteridge. My Name is Lucy Barton. All of her work I love. Um, Pat Barker, she did the series that has a name that I can't remember right now. So that's historical fiction. Elizabeth Strout is just, contemporary novelist. I love Lauren Graff. Oh my God. I think
Amazing.
The Vaster Wilds was a book that holy shit, I didn't want it to end. And when it did end, I could not stop thinking about it. And and when it ended as well, I was in tears. And I was just so deeply affected by that story. And then her story, The Matrix. Oh, geez, that was a whole nother one. Um, and then I love like David Grann, oh my gosh. Like, seriously? Seriously? What the F,
Yeah.
I can't wait until the next thing he does. He finds these stories to tell that are just impossible to forget and just how he even finds these stories. It's like, talk about process. That's what's fascinating to me as well. Well, I don't know what this says about me, but I love dystopian fiction.
Hmm.
Like, but I have to be in the right frame of mind for it. Like sometimes real life is already too dystopian. So I don't want to read something when things are tense in the real world. But occasionally it is a welcome escape. So,
So I will defend myself slightly. And that
oh,
is
what
that.
did I say that makes you feel
No, 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 no. Now I feel like now I'm going through all of my oh my gosh, am I a ritual person? Um, so when an author writes something, like when Jennifer Egan puts something out, I'm the first one in line to buy a Jennifer Egan book or
Yeah.
S.A. Cosby.
Oh,
I mean,
yes. Yes. Yes.
do you like S.A. Cosby?
Yes. Being,
I
being
had
the,
him on the podcast, so I
oh,
know him.
oh, you know
And
him. You know him.
well, I've
You
had
need
him
it.
on,
Yeah.
and it was fascinating because um, he was talking about razor blade tears, as that was the book he was working on when I interviewed him. And I was able to bring him to do reading at my alma mater. I went to a small school out in Michigan, and we went out afterwards, and I just got to pick his brain for like 4 hours
Oh,
over
wow,
at an
that's fun.
Irish pub, and it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
So S.A. Cosby, Kevin Wilson. I mean, there are certain authors that I will read absolutely when
yeah,
stuff comes out.
right.
Um, okay, so I'm almost hesitant to ask this question.
Oh, God.
But I'm gonna just go ahead anyway.
Okay.
Uh, do you, if you're reading a book that you're just not feeling it, will you finish it or are you okay putting it down?
Okay, so I think in the last couple of years, this is the wisdom I think that comes with age, is that at a certain point, you don't care. You don't care what people think, and you don't you're not, like, again, you're not hanging yourself off a hook. And you have and maybe it's because the wisdom of aging is that we do realize that life is short or shorter. And why would you wanna spend another hour reading, turning pages and going, "I'm not even taking this in because I'm so bored," or "I'm just not moved by the" whatever the hooks are that keep us in a story, they're not there. And so it I think but it I used to be that person who would slog through it. And and you finish it if finish it, and you have no memory of what you've read because you didn't take it in, because you didn't care, because you were bored silly, because you fell asleep. Just all the reasons, right? And somehow, as I've in the last few years, I've become the other person where I go, I'm going to close this book. I'm going to put it on my shelf. Maybe I'll lend it out to somebody. Maybe I'll put it in one of the little libraries at the side of the street, whatever. It just wasn't for me. And it's okay. And it's not a judgment on the person who wrote it, the story. It's just, it didn't grab me. And so I want to move on to the next book that's at the top of my pile on my nightstand. And we all know what is the Japanese term kintsugo, or for, you know, the abundance of books that we haven't necessarily read, but that we take great pleasure and pride in that pile of books. And it's like we look at it with reverence every day, and the higher, the better.
And that was my interview with Mary Chapin Carpenter. A couple of notes, addendums to the interview, just to tie things up. She had mentioned an author. She could not remember the author's name during our interview when she was talking about rituals, and this author interviewed her about her ritual. The author's name was Danye Ramine Powell. I hope I got that correct. She's a poet and author from Charlotte. And she also mentioned at the end, she said kintsugi is the art of acquiring reading materials, but kintsugi, it turns out, is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery. So she emailed me afterwards and said the correct term, and this is at the very end of the interview, is sundoku, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. It is the Japanese term that refers to the act of acquiring reading materials but letting them pile up without reading them. It describes the practice of buying more books than one can read and often keeping them in a stack or a pile. So just want to clear those things up. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the interview. I certainly did. And that's it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, you can find all the episodes on all major streaming platforms and also at the Songwriters on Process website. That is at songwritersonpodcast.com. Pre-2020, this was not a pod. I was transcribing all of the interviews. So you can find all of them, hundreds of them, many hundreds of them, on the Songwriters on Process website. You'll find both the transcribed interviews and the pod there. Take a deep dive, spend a day. These are great conversations with songwriters just about the writing process. Also, my book, Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, is out now worldwide on Hachette Books. You can find it online in all major bookstores. Mark is a good friend. He is the guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God, and it's his memoir. Again, that is called Desolation, a heavy metal memoir by Mark Morton with Ben Opapari. I am biased, but that's a damn good book. My email, ben@songwritersonprocess.com. Send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love suggestions, questions, comments. People always email me and tell me who they want to see on the pod next. You never know. Send me an email, ben@songwritersonprocess.com. That's it for me, everyone. Have a great day.